Hey, this is Bunny. Today we are painting something called the Lava Caverns from Dungeons and Lasers. Now, everybody knows I love some Dungeons and Lasers. Everyone knows that. And these sets are really cool because if you look, they're made out of a translucent plastic. Because of that, I have not primed them. And I'm not doing a real paint job. So when you have translucent plastic and you want a quick and easy way to jazz it up a little bit, you break out a wash in a contrasting color. In my case, I am using a sepia wash. That does tend to be my favorite of the darker washes. You could use a black, I suppose. Black looks pretty good against lava-ish colors, but I don't want to. So the trick here is I don't want it sitting on the surface. I want it to sink down into the grooves. To pull that off, you need to thin down your wash. Okay, so you don't want to use a thick wash at all. It really needs to flow. It needs to be basically no thicker than water. Okay, and we are going to just take it and let it drip into those little crevices. Okay, we want it to go into those crevices because it's important. So we're just going to make sure we get it into all those crevices because look at already, and it's not even dry yet, how that's starting to stand out, but we don't want to compromise that translucent nature. We want the translucentness. That's a new word. Trust me, it's a word. But you want that to stay. So you are going to take your brush and you are going to put a very thin coat of wash on here, okay? And you are going to let that coat of wash sink into those grooves because we want that to stand out, okay? We want to get it all pretty. We don't want to cover up the translucent nature of these pieces because they're cool. And if I grab my black primer, well, I mean, you can. If you do not want to maintain that translucent nature, just grab your primer. You'll still have all the texture and everything. But the reason the company printed them like this is because it's really cool. Okay, it's really cool. So we're just going to do this. And I'm just going to keep going. It's easy, okay? It's so easy. You don't have to put a lot of effort in. You can, okay? You could do a really complicated process, but we're doing this because it's quick and easy, and isn't that the whole point of this particular channel? Quick, easy, that you can do at home and be happy with. So that's what we're going to do. Okay, we are going to quick and easy bring out these highlights. And have a paper towel in case you do apply too much. Have a paper towel nearby. But because this is such a really smooth plastic, it's not really going to hang around very much. So I'm just going to push this back to this side. If you see it pooling on one spot, push it around so that it gets to where you need it to go. All right. Better. There we go. We want it in those grooves. Sink in there. That's what we want. Just to give it a nice little bit of definition. Now, what we're not going to do is do only this. Okay? We're going to need a little bit more. So, this is really only going to be a 2-step process. And those 2 steps are the wash, which we have to apply on both sides, not on the floor pieces, but on the walls. We're going to have to flip them. Some areas eat up more wash than others. Okay. But we're going to come back after we've done all the wash, both sides, and we're going to do a little bit of dry brushing. And by dry brushing, I mean gold, to kind of bring that color back up. And we're not really darkening these. If you look, you're going to see we haven't really darkened them, right? Instead, what we've done is just highlighted them, because you can still see through the plastic. Look at these floor pieces. You can still see through the plastic, right? You can still see what's underneath there. But it's just adding a layer of dimension, making it look just a little bit cooler than it might otherwise have looked. Because we just want to give it some texture, make it look a little fancier for those game nights, because we do love our game nights. It's not that I can't use it like this. It's fine. You can use it unpainted. That's not a big deal. But I find this just gives it a little more, a little something. And sometimes you need that little something. Sometimes you just need things to be a little bit fancier, which is fine. So we're just fancying it up by doing just a few passes of wash. Now make sure you get enough wash in there. Some of these grooves are really deep, and we want to get all of the grooves kind of showing up. So you might have to add more wash than you think, because the wash does kind of contract. So definitely pay attention to how much wash you're going to need, and don't be afraid to come back a second time and add a whole bunch more wash. Okay, but again, I'm using a fairly thin wash so that it does sink into the grooves and doesn't try to sit on the surface. So sometimes I use a thicker wash if that's the look I'm going for, but right now we just want all of this to sink down and really bring out some definition, and you will see the effect when it dries, because that's what we need to wait for, is the drying. Because using it just like this is so boring. It's so boring. So I'm going to paint the rest of these off camera, because it is kind of boring watching me do the exact same thing on multiple tiles multiple times. But it's still fun. So this is one of the simplest ways to paint tiles that are translucent. If you like the color, remember, if you don't like the color, just paint over it. Get your primer out, paint it, and be done with it. You don't have to leave it translucent just because the manufacturer made it that way. Like, you can decide you would rather do an entirely different color and style, but I happen to really like these. So I'll finish painting these guys off camera. We will come back just as soon as it's all dry. Okay, we're going to flip these guys over. We're not quite done addressing the wash yet. So what we have to do is come back and actually scrub some off. Because remember, it will come off simply because there's no primer on these. So you didn't prime them. So because you didn't prime them, the paint is not fully adhered, because it's not going to be. So what we're going to do is just load this side, obviously not of the floor pieces. We will load this side, and then we will come back when it's 100% dry. It has to be dry or this isn't going to work. When it's 100% dry, we're going to come back with a damp paper towel, not dripping. It has to be damp, or a damp cloth, whatever you'd like. And we are going to use that to kind of scrub some off, because you have to put a fair amount if you want all of this to get into the grooves. But you have to put so much that you actually get too much on your pieces, right? If you look at the finished floor that you can see, it's actually got a little too much because some ends up sitting on top. So we're going to scrub that off. Now, you can't scrub it off if you're using primer, obviously, but we didn't use primer because we like the translucent nature. So if you're doing this, what you can do, there we go, what you can do is put a lot on. Ignore the dog. She's excited because somebody's here. But what you can do is put quite a lot on, and then you can come back with a paper towel and remove what you don't like. So that's what we're doing. We're putting quite a lot on. You can't do that if you primed your pieces. But we're painting translucents, so we didn't prime them. So we're going to come back. I'll finish most of these off camera, but we're going to come back and start scrubbing off some of what we have applied, because it will come off, I promise. I promise. So go ahead and load up your translucent pieces as much as you need to. Okay? Load them up. I promise you can remove what you don't like later. So I'm going to finish these off camera and we'll come back and I'll show you exactly how that works. And it does work, I promise. All right, now we're going to work at removing some of this. So see, it comes right off. And remove as much or as little as you want. If you like the way it looks, then you're not going to remove very much at all. But remember, it's okay to make a mistake here. If you take too much off, that's actually okay. All right, if you take too much off, you're still fine. Okay, because you can always go back and add more. That's how much I want to take off of that. So I'm only going to do 5 pieces because everything else is identical. You can see the difference. So what we're going to do is, after I have done this, we're going to let it dry. It doesn't take very long to dry. It's not like the wash. We're going to let it dry, come back, and then we are going to do the other side. None of the floor pieces. But see, it comes off. So what you do is you're kind of using that to blend. Okay? Take off as much or as little as you want. We'll be right back. Okay, we're going to turn these guys over. Remember, you do have to wait till they're dry. Right? We're obviously not going to turn over the floor tiles. That would be silly. Don't need to turn over the floor tiles. Okay. And then you pick these guys up and you give them a polish, right, with a damp cloth or a damp paper towel, and you remove what you don't want there. And you can go back and forth as many times as you want. See, comes right off. But you can go back and forth as many times as you want to get off the bits you don't like. Okay, so if you are like, well, that's too much in that spot, just take it off. Not a big deal. Not a big deal at all. But now you have to let them dry again. So basically, this is one of those things that kind of reactivates your wash. And the only reason this works again is because we didn't prime anything. So this works, and it's a valid technique if you're working on bare plastic where the wash won't adhere. But remember, if you're working on any kind of painted surface or primed surface, then you are going to end up disappointed because it won't come off, or it'll take all the primer off, or it'll take your underlaying coats of paint. This technique specifically works, okay? Specifically works if and only if you're working on bare plastic. because the primers and the paints don't actually adhere to bare plastic very well. And the other part of this is now you are going to have to make very sure that you seal this properly. Now you always should. Let's be clear. You should always seal this properly. Okay? There's no doubt about that. You should seal it properly. Always. Because your paint will eventually flake, and if you don't properly seal your pieces. Okay? But in this case, it's even more important. Alright? And we did that one already. This one needs a little more off it in this corner. Anyway, I'm going to keep doing this. Finish up my last few tiles. And we will come back just as soon as I'm done. And then we're going to do a little dry brushing. Because even though we didn't do an undercoat, we didn't do any kind of undercoat or anything like that, we are going to still do some dry brushing on top just to highlight some colors. And specifically, I'm going to use gold because I think gold kind of looks good with a lava cavern. We'll be right back. Okay, time to do a little dry brushing. So remember, dry brushing is essentially very little paint. Okay, very little paint. And then you take that paint and you go rah, 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 rah. And yeah, you have to make a sound effect. That's the law of dry brushing. Rah, 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 rah. You have to do it. It's the law. Have to do the sound effect. And you basically are just giving a cast over that. Now, be careful that you don't start rubbing some of your other stuff off. Because essentially what's going to happen if you're not careful is you could rub off some of that wash. And the reason that could happen, the reason it could likely happen is, remember, this isn't primed, right? This isn't primed. So we're just doing a cast, but we're being careful not to rub off our already established wash there because we don't want that. There we go. I like that. And you just go until you like it. You can add more or less depending on what you like. And remember, the less paint that's on your brush, the better. Right? The less paint that's on your brush, the better. Add more paint if you need to, but otherwise, you can go slow and easy and add more paint to your brush if you want to. Okay, one more piece, then we will come back when it's time to flip these guys. I'm just doing the doors, but we will come back when it's time to flip these guys. Just remember with your dry brushing, slow, easy. I know it looks like I'm moving really fast, but it's kind of the technique. Go slow, go easy, and it'll look real pretty. We will come back as soon as I've done the rest and we're ready to flip. All right, let's flip everyone over. Just the walls, obviously. We're not flipping over the floors. We don't need to. But you can see the difference. They look so much better once they get some gold on them. It really makes them shine. And it's supposed to. It's absolutely supposed to. If you heard a sound in the background, I have a rabbit. I have rabbits and dogs and stuff. So I'm just going to whack a bunch more gold onto here, onto this side, and we will let that dry. And then when we come back, we'll be able to look at it assembled. This is literally the last thing I'm doing. This is the quickest and easiest way to paint something that's translucent, that you want to stay translucent. You want to maintain really the beauty of the translucent material, but you also want to give it a little more depth, right? Because let's be honest, it doesn't have a ton of depth when it's just the plastic. And it's kind of boring. So this kind of jazzes it up a little, makes it really cool. And you can wipe this off really easily with a damp paper towel because, like the other stuff, it is really easy to remove. Now, what we do have to do before we muck around and start putting it together, we have to make absolutely sure that we seal it because it'll rub off on your fingers. Remember, it's really just not going to adhere to the plastic. You have to do the sealant over top. Like, you have to. Because this plastic is not designed to have paint on it. So you have to. And I mean that. You have to make sure you seal it. So before I put it together, I'm going to take it outside, give it a good spray, make sure that it's looking the way it's supposed to and all the paint will adhere. And then we have to let it dry for 24 hours. Okay? We do have to let it dry. It takes a week to cure, really, because this is plastic. Check your bottle. Okay, the back of my bottle will tell me 7 days to cure on plastic, and that's fine. Okay, that's fine on plastic because I can just wait a week before using this. This is going to be a terrain piece that we get to see in one of our really nice campaigns. I'm just going to add a little more gold to my pile. I don't add very much paint at a time to my little palette because I don't want too much gold. It's really not, like, if I have too much gold, it'll just dry up before I use it. And then, see, I over applied right there. So you just pick it up with your brush later, because really this comes right off. Like, I rub it with the brush. And yes, am I wrecking the brush? Yeah. Do I care? Not particularly. This brush is old and worn already. For dry brushing, you should use a brush where you really don't care about what it's going to look like tomorrow, because that's really what it is. You're going to destroy a few brushes in your dry brushing adventures, and that's okay, because you really have to be quite rough with your dry brushing technique, especially if you want to get it really nice and even. So I'm just kind of booping some paint on here and then smushing it off. You will have your own technique that works best for you, and for me it varies depending on the piece. Like with a piece like this, I just start going. With the door pieces, because they're not like one consistent piece, I do boop a little around the edges and then I move that. See, and it still has the nice translucent quality that we're used to. So this is so simple to paint. It really, really is. Simple, simple, simple. I love how simple this is. And just 2 more pieces. I probably don't need to have you watch all this, but I don't feel like stopping. I don't feel like stopping. Also, these videos are all time-lapsed as well in my time-lapse playlist. So if you want to see the process but don't want to hear me blah, 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 then you might want to go check those out. They are shorter because they're quite sped up, but you can still get the idea, right? So quick with your dry brush, quick with your dry brush technique. Okay, you want to move fairly fast, and there we go. So we're going to let that dry. I'm going to run these out and seal them as soon as they're dry, and I will assemble it. And when we come back, you'll get to see what it looks like all put together. And there we go. It's all dry and sealed and looking pretty darn good. So again, we didn't want to cover up the translucent nature of the floor, so you can still see my fingers underneath the floor there. Okay, because it's translucent, not transparent. And we wanted to just add some dimension and some shine. So if you're going to do that, you want to just make sure that you are careful not to over or under apply. Don't be afraid to go back, add extra, or take more off if you're not happy with the result. And remember that you have to seal it because there's no primer. If there was primer, that would really wreck the entire thing. So because there's no primer, you have to seal it. You should seal all of your miniatures that you paint, but with miniatures that are painted on bare plastic, it's even more important. That's it for today. I'll see you next time. Bye!